Hello, this is Patrick W. Crawford, the Duck Owl, Moo-Ack Productions, and this is my content commentary for my 24-hour animation contest entry, The Stoplight. And just so you understand, as the viewer, this is not a technical commentary. If you're looking to see how I did these effects or composite together, this is not what you want to watch. For I'm going to be focusing on more what's being said by this animation. So if you felt like there was a message that just kind of skipped you by, or you're a bit curious to see what my thoughts are on what's being said, then this is what you should watch. It's a little context to this poem. That's poem in quotation marks because I'm not a poet, but rather it's just something that an idea I had that I put down in writing form. I came up with the idea more or less a couple of years ago when I was with my Dutch rowing club going to a summer camp. It's kind of irrelevant who I was with, but as Dutchmen do, we had to bike all the way to this camp, 40 Ks with all our stuff, and then have the camp. On the way back, we have to bike again, another 40K with all the bags, and of course by then we're quite tired, it's a bit cold out, and of course we're all feeling a bit sick, and lovely things like that. And so that's when I start to space out, as I do. And so it helps if you know the geography of Holland a little bit better. It's very flat. If you start from the middle of a city, go 5 minutes in one direction, you'll be in the middle of nowhere. Go 5 more minutes in the same direction, and you'll be back in the middle of the city. So in that way, it's always the same, but always changing around you. But the key thing is that the horizon is always level. It's always flat. You never have obstructions like mountains or anything. And so this already sort of sets up the setting of where this animation starts. So it says that this person comes up to this stoplight, and it is every person comes across this point. But the thing is, there's no intersection, there's not even any other vehicles. It seems that this stoplight has lost its purpose. I mean, usually there's good reason to follow the rules of a stoplight. It keeps you from crashing into other cars and vehicles, and it avoids pain and lovely things like that. But here there really is no point. And so all around in every direction you have this sort of flat landscape, maybe like that of Holland. And so this gives the distinct impression that he's nowhere near any significant destination or place, so he has come from afar and he's going farther forward. And so he has a long ways to go, he has a long journey ahead of him, which brings me to the setting of time. As I said, it is in the poem, it is at dawn. So it has come from the darkness of the night or the early morning, and it is progressing to this point where the light is finally peaking up, eventually to go to the time of day where it is fully light, midday. And yet time stands still. So what this, in literature, this sort of transition around this point of dawn could be considered the idea of going from birth or early life to a later point in life where you have more experience. So coming from ignorance to a more experienced viewpoint. But this person, every person in fact, gets stuck at this point of dawn, between the light and the dark. And so this person drives up and he comes to the stoplight and he's stuck. As time stands still, so does the light. As I said, it is something that has more or less lost its original function, its purpose. It can be thought as a symbol, it can be thought as a personal blocking point. Something that shouldn't be there, just as this light in the middle of nowhere shouldn't actually be there. It's this blocking point in every person's life where they feel like they need to wait for something to happen. Like this person thinks he needs to wait for the light to change, when in fact he just needs to go forward. He needs to press on the gas and move on down the road to allow time to start moving again, to get to a further point along in his life. But sometimes it's quite difficult to realize this. And so we get this sort of tension in the poem, still in quotation marks. We have what's actually physically being said out loud, And then we also have what's the subtitles, the subtext, which is sort of contrasting what's actually being said. And what this helps to develop throughout is that feeling of fear, this feeling of tension. So in this case, literally, maybe the reason the guy stops is because he's worried about getting a ticket. The cameras are watching. And so he just immediately gives up all his power to the authority of the stoplight, the absolute authority. But indeed, there's no reason for this blocking point, this personal blocking point as the light represents, to have any authority. It is meaningless. It has no purpose. And so this person doesn't realize this at first. Like any person, they're coming from this ignorant point in their life. They don't know how to recognize this blocking point. But eventually, he starts to think. When we get to those personal blocking points, we don't sit there indefinitely. We don't let time stand still forever. We don't become that person who spends their entire life waiting for this one thing to happen. Eventually, we start to think. Emotion kicks in. We start to realize that there's something we need to do and not be passive in our own lives. We need to take an active role. And there's actually a tinge of regret that this man is wasting this portion of his life for no reason. And so that's when he starts to think. He realized that no one told him to stop, despite the original feeling that he needed to obey. He knows that nothing keeps him from driving on, that there is no control. Control was a subtitle I meant to put over that point. And so when he realized that there is no reason for him to actually stop. It's like any person they realize in their life that there is no reason that this, whatever blocking point it may be, would stop him. And so he moves on. He realizes that's it. He gets the courage to stick against his fate and move on down the road, down his life, allowing time to flow again. And so that's really it. I mean, it may not sound literally very impressive that he's just running through a red light. It's not that ambitious, but in all reality, when any person comes across this stopping point, as we all do, it is quite difficult to muster up that courage, to come to that realization that it's just a stoplight. Or it's just, I mean, it could be anything, really. But often in life, we make a big deal out of what isn't significant, what shouldn't be a big deal, and that holds us back, when really it shouldn't, and that's all this film is saying. So, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helped you understand my intent a little bit better. On another side note, one thing I chose not to do was have the sun rising out of the direction that he was heading towards down the road. While it maybe would have had more symbolic meaning, I thought it didn't have a very nice look in the set, the way everything would have been lit up. Aside from that, I'm actually quite happy how it came out. I hope you took something from this. Hopefully now if you ever come across one of these stoplights, you know that, of course, after looking both left and right, seeing no one's coming, you know to just go for it. So this is the stoplight made for the bricksandmotion.com animation contest, 24-hour animation contest. And this is my commentary. Moo-Ack.